con la dottoressa Emmy. Are they in? Yes. Okay, so maybe how can maybe they can say hi to us so we can also see their faces.
Do you hear it, Fatou? So what is it?
It's 2 hours, 1 minute, and so I think we can start.
Hi Simè, welcome.
Ciao, ciao Danila, ciao Giuseppe.
Ciao a tutti.
Siamo tutti. Hi Howard.
Good morning, good afternoon.
Giuseppe, quando vuoi, abbiamo anche gli ospiti Riccardo Moro e Valeria
The time
Emmi.
is very short, very good.
Prima di iniziare. Please remind everyone about interpretation.
Thank you very much to everyone. Good afternoon to everyone. Good morning for all people that is connected by around the world. Good evening for the people from Asia that is evening now. I am very happy to opening this to introduce this meeting with our working group on the International Cooperative Alliance that we have organized within the Italian presidency of the C20. This meeting, we are also translation services in English and Spanish and Italian. I think is we can choose your languages if you use the image of the word that you have on the your screen and choose English or Spanish. Spanish, I think, is Italian, not Spanish.
Yeah,
Really.
Italian,
Okay.
Italian, English just, use Italian.
Okay.
Yeah.
Italian and English, the languages that we can use today, and so we can choose, the people can hear and talk in English or Italian. I speak in my bad English for start this meeting, and so let me thank you very much, all of you, but in particular the speaker that today are present in this meeting. I introduce the speaker during the meeting, and now just a few words to present the G20. It's an international forum for economic cooperation, which bring together leaders and representatives from every continent, as well as governors of central bank, civil society, to collectively address the most significant challenges and propose impactful solution for the whole world. This is the role of the G20, and the International Cooperative Alliance has been participating in the C20 engagement group since 2014. It's 6 years that we participate as International Alliance and the G20 work, but it's the first time that we participate in the C20. I present after the C20 now, just to remember that this year the presidency of the C20 is charged Italian government, and so it's Italian that have a responsibility to make work to conduce this activity. But now, first of all, let's listen to the video message from our president, Ariel Guarco. Please, Santos, if you can start the video.
Before that, Chairperson, I'm sorry. Before that, Chairperson. Chairperson.
I present after the intervent. Sorry, now we are the video from Ariel Guarco, sorry. And after I introduce you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
We cannot hear Ariel Guarco.
Sorry, Santos, we cannot hear.
It's time for the president. The president must present. We don't hear president.
Estimados amigos del grupo de trabajo G20 de la
Assist him to
Alianza.
unmute. Assist the president to unmute.
Just give me, please give me a second. I'm just trying to figure out why the audio is not working.
It was working.
It was?
It was. So please, Mr. Bell, for just 5 minutes, wait with us and we will listen to Mr. Guarco. Please, Santos, go ahead.
Okay, thank you.
Estimados amigos del grupo de trabajo G20 de la Alianza Cooperativa Internacional, en primer lugar, quiero agradecer el esfuerzo de todos ustedes para mejorar y profundizar el diálogo del movimiento cooperativo con todos los actores del G20. Es un esfuerzo clave para lograr que el cooperativismo contribuya eficazmente a los grandes retos que enfrenta la humanidad. Muchas gracias a su presidente, Howard Brodsky. Muchas gracias a Giuseppe Guerini y Alessandro Gina, vicepresidentes. Y muchas gracias a Danila Curcio y Stefania Marcone, facilitadoras del C20 y del B20 respectivamente. Mi agradecimiento también a todos los amigos del cooperativismo italiano, que han asumido con mucha seriedad el trabajo de incidencia sobre las personas, los gobiernos, las empresas, los organismos internacionales y las organizaciones de la sociedad civil convocadas a participar en la Cumbre 2021. Muchas gracias a la Alianza Cooperativa Italiana por su liderazgo en este proceso. Muchas gracias también a los cooperativistas de todos los continentes que se han sumado en sus esfuerzos para trabajar juntos en esta gran tarea de incidencia del movimiento cooperativo a nivel global. Celebro profundamente la iniciativa de compartir experiencias y visiones frente a los distintos temas que se están tratando en el C20. Y celebro que podamos hacerlo junto con los Sherpas de Italia, Ricardo Moro y Valeria Emi. Muchas gracias a ellos por ayudarnos a lograr un diálogo eficaz con todos los participantes del C20. Como todos sabemos, los tiempos del diálogo internacional suelen ser largos. Probablemente no alcancemos en esta cumbre todos los objetivos que nos hemos propuesto, pero estoy seguro de que será un punto de inflexión en nuestra relación con el G20, en la medida que logremos poner en juego nuestra identidad. Precisamente, nuestra Declaración Internacional de Identidad Cooperativa, que acaba de cumplir 25 años, explica de forma clara quiénes somos. Las cooperativas somos asociaciones autónomas de personas que se han unido voluntariamente para hacer frente a sus necesidades y aspiraciones económicas, sociales y culturales comunes por medio de una empresa de propiedad conjunta y democráticamente controlada. En otras palabras, somos organizaciones de la sociedad civil que, para cumplir nuestros objetivos, constituimos nuestras propias empresas. Existen muchas organizaciones de la sociedad civil que orientan sus esfuerzos a interpelar a los gobiernos. Proponen y exigen leyes y políticas públicas que respondan a sus preocupaciones. Existen otras organizaciones de la sociedad civil que orientan sus esfuerzos a interpelar a las empresas. Les preocupa la concentración económica, les preocupan los derechos de los trabajadores y de las comunidades, que a menudo son ignoradas en nombre de la rentabilidad. Finalmente, existe un tercer grupo de organizaciones de la sociedad civil que orienta sus esfuerzos a construir empresas para dar respuestas a sus necesidades, a partir de la ayuda mutua, la democracia y la solidaridad. Esos somos las cooperativas. No negamos los esfuerzos que deben realizarse para incidir sobre las políticas de los gobiernos. Nosotros también los hacemos. No negamos los esfuerzos que deben realizarse para que las empresas incorporen las dimensiones de la responsabilidad social. Pero nosotros proponemos otro camino, complementario a todos ellos. Proponemos transformar la responsabilidad social en empresas. Como tantas veces hemos dicho, no somos empresas con responsabilidad social. Somos la responsabilidad social hecha empresa. Somos la sociedad civil organizando empresas para responder en forma autónoma a nuestras necesidades y aspiraciones. Ese es el mensaje que estoy seguro podremos llevar a cada una de las reuniones de la Cumbre 2021. Este grupo de trabajo expresa muy bien los casi 200 años de historia del cooperativismo mundial, experiencia que hoy se torna sumamente valiosa si queremos reconstruir mejor juntos este mundo golpeado por la pandemia y que enfrenta serios desafíos en materia social, económica y ambiental. Por eso apostamos también a seguir profundizando nuestra identidad cooperativa, por lo cual los invito a participar de nuestro próximo Congreso Cooperativo Mundial, que tenemos previsto celebrar del 1 al 3 de diciembre en Seúl, República de Corea, y también en línea. Muchas gracias nuevamente al equipo de la Alianza Cooperativa Italiana. Muchas gracias a los Sherpas italianos por su presencia y muchas gracias a todos los amigos que en cada región de la ASI están contribuyendo a llevar nuestras propuestas y nuestras ideas. Les dejo a todos y a todas un gran abrazo cooperativo. Estimados amigos del grupo de trabajo G20.
Muchas gracias. Thank you very much for this very good messages from our president. Now we can advance in your meeting in April month, in the last April. The International Cooperative Alliance set up a G20 working group, which is collaborating with members of the Italian Cooperative Alliance to contribute to the G20 work, to G20 discussion, in particular involving the B20 as Business 20, a working group for enterprises, and the C20, civil society working group of task force to work. The chairman for this cooperative task force is Howard Brodsky, our colleague. Mr. Brodsky is co-founder, chair, and co-chief executive of CCA Global Partners in the United States of America. He was the 2019 recipient of Rothschild Pioneers Award, and so it's a very, very important member of the Cooperative International Cooperative Alliance, and I am very happy to give the floor. Please, Mr. Brodsky, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Giuseppe. Good afternoon, and it's my real sincere appreciation for the opportunity to talk to you about the impact of cooperatives around the world. For the first time, representative governments hosting the G20 has utilized its national co-op movement, working with the International Cooperative Alliance to participate with the C20 and the B20 working groups within the G20 summit, representing countries from around the world. And we're very grateful to our Italian colleagues, the Sherpas, Mr. Moro, Mrs. Bulba, and Ms. Emma. These are milestones in the relationship and engagements of contribution. But we know the COVID-19 pandemic has led to a dramatic loss of human life worldwide and represents an unprecedented challenge to public health, our food systems, and our world of work. The economic and social disruption caused by the pandemic is devastating, with tens of millions of people at risk of falling into extreme poverty. And while the number of undernourished people currently estimated at almost 700 million could increase up to 132 million by the end of the year, and millions of enterprises face an existential threat Nearly half of the world's population, 3.3 billion workforce, are at risk of potentially losing their livelihood. The informal economy workers are particularly vulnerable because the majority lack social protection and access to quality healthcare and access to the productive assets. In the last decade, the top 1% of the wealth has gone, 90% of the wealth has gone to the top 1% in the world. And I believe we should live in a world of we and not me. The cooperative model contributes to a stable and vibrant economy. Business can no longer afford to ignore the social and economic impact of what is happening. And I believe there are two types of poverty. There is economic poverty and poverty of hope. And I think the cooperative model addresses both of these with scale. To give a voice to those without a voice. The cooperative solution touches on from healthcare to farming to business to banking. It's an inclusive solution for wealth creation and hope. You know what's interesting that most people don't realize? That the cooperatives employ 280 million people across the globe. 280 million. And the cooperatives have over 1 billion members. That is scale and that is impact. But the cooperative model is also very entrepreneurial. The cooperative model accounts for at least 12% of humanity. It's interesting, the United Nations in 2012 proclaimed the International Year of Cooperative to highlight the power of shared ownership model to reduce poverty, generate employment, and support social integration. Our work is different. It is more holistic. It is more inclusive. But what's interesting is we think globally, but without a question, we act locally. The cooperative model is entrepreneurial by its very nature, but it's inclusive and with shared wealth and shared ownership. Co-ops prove that business can be a force of good. Co-ops, in my mind, are the great equalizer. You know, there was a recent study in over 3 continents, and members of cooperatives had above average incomes and were very much less likely to be poor. And holistically, cooperative members enjoyed a better sense of overall well-being, financial security, and trust in their community. And during these times of need, cooperative members have access to social support systems and other resources that support their resiliency and ability to weather these adverse effects. So not only have the business leaders of the global cooperative movement and our Italian colleagues and hosts been participating, but also contributing with over 30 people in 8 working groups, coordinating over 100 people to ensure participation and contributions are valid, representative, and progressive. We're supporting and writing papers collaboratively with the Italian representatives contributing to the C20. While all this work is not finalized, this is the beginning, we believe, of an ongoing engagement with the global political machine that not only with our meetings and contributions continue through the summer and autumn, but we are organizing a formal side event in October as a component of the C20 and G20 summit. And we are honored today with license of this meeting to welcome representatives of the sectors and regions of the cooperative movement from around the world in this conversation with the C20 Sherpas to highlight the innovative and impactful work of cooperatives. We have today with us Mr. Marengu from Africa speaking on finance, Mr. Wilson from North America speaking about gender, Mr. Zarko from Europe speaking on health and the pandemic reaction, and Mr. Nakano from Japan, speaking on labor and the vision of 2030. At the beginning, we introduced Mr. Giuseppe, who's our moderator today, but beyond being a moderator, he is actually also one of the vice chairs and playing an absolute critical instrumental role in our progress and how far we have come. We know that all of us should be driven by a moral compass. And I think without a question, cooperatives deliver on that moral compass by our very nature. And I think we should understand the promise of a more inclusive future is within our grasp. Cooperatives, by their very nature, are inclusive, they're scalable, they're entrepreneurial, and they address so many of the issues facing our world today. We hope to be part of this very important work of the G20, C20, and B20. Thank you so much for your time today.
Well, thank you very much, Howard, not only for your intervention, for your very kind of work, but for above all for your work in our task force. And so we can enter on the heart of the meeting with the intervention of our colleague from the 4 continental area of the International Cooperatives Alliance. I strongly recommend that you keep your speech with the limit of 5-6 minutes. Very, very short, because the time is not more, and so we need to be very synthetic. The first speaker in the whole program is Vincent Marangu, the Director of Cooperative Banking Division from the Cooperative Bank of Kenya. Him representing Africa continent, and his presentation will focus on the cooperatives' impact on the financial sector. Into the C20 working group, there is a financial working group, and so we are very interested to hear your position. And so, please, Mr. Marangu, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Giuseppe. Good afternoon. Buon pomeriggio, for those who speak Italian. I am happy to join the International Cooperative Alliance and the Italian Cooperative Alliance this afternoon to share with you a few stories about Africa. I work with the Cooperative Bank of Kenya. Cooperative Bank of Kenya is the largest cooperative bank in Africa. It's a bank that was started in 1968 by farmers organized through their cooperatives. In Africa, most of the cooperatives are agriculture-based, and from them, then people are able to organize themselves and produce agriculture commodities, which they market through their cooperatives. They are also able to form their own financial cooperatives, what we call SACCOs, savings and credit cooperatives. In other countries, these are credit unions. Therefore, the impact of the cooperatives in Africa in terms of financial inclusion has been very great. If you look at the example of Cooperative Bank, the bank started by cooperatives themselves. It is a bank that today is owned by 65% of the cooperatives in Kenya. There are over 24,000 registered cooperatives in Kenya. And these cooperatives cut across all sectors. We have housing cooperatives, over 1,000 of them. We have cooperatives in the transport sector, over 1,300. We have the savings and credit cooperatives, the SACCOs, which are over 10,000. And then we have cooperatives in the agriculture sector. And all these cooperatives then do give livelihood to most, almost 70% of Kenyans depend on their cooperatives. Cooperative Bank itself has been able to grow to have 8.8 million customers, supporting the over 15 million members of the cooperatives through their own savings and credit cooperatives. How do we do it? We let the savings and credit cooperatives offer financial services to the members at the grassroots level, and we support them from a wholesale perspective. And those savings and credit cooperatives are able to extend financial services to the rural communities where no bank can find it necessary to open a branch. So we have about 174 registered and regulated deposit-taking SACCOs, and these SACCOs operate like commercial banks. Some of them in Kenya, they are bigger than commercial banks. So they offer all services, and we as Cooperative Bank have been able to integrate with those SACCOs so that their members have access to debit cards, Visa-branded debit cards, which they use to get services at ATMs and at merchant outlets. We're able to give them personal checkbooks. We're able to integrate them in the national payment systems such that populations in the rural areas access financial services through their own cooperatives that are integrated in the Cooperative Bank. And because of that, then cooperatives are huge in Kenya. Kenya is ranked top in terms of penetration of cooperatives, and is a story that has significant impact. I want to take 2 minutes to share with you a just quick example of how this rural financial inclusion helps Kenya. I'll use an example of a dairy cooperative in a location called West Pokot. This is a remote area in Kenya where there were two conflicting communities. They were fighting, involved in cattle rustling. And one of the ways to bring peace among the community was to encourage them to form a dairy cooperative. So they started then keeping dairy cows, and they agreed that they will be unified, that they will not fight over animals and steal each other animals and fight and kill each other. So they came together, formed a cooperative, the two warring communities, and they were able to then start bringing their milk together and taking to the market. Every day they collect over 15,000 liters of milk. And then to get payment, they formed a savings and credit cooperative. We supported that saving and credit cooperative to ensure that if you deliver your milk to the dairy cooperative, you be paid through your savings and credit cooperative account, which is a SACCO. So we had the women who are illiterate starting to speak financial language. For example, they would walk into their SACCO and ask, if I take this loan, what is the interest rate? So they are speaking in their local language, but they can mention interest rate. The women could speak and talk about, what is the penalty? What is the charges? So they started speaking financial language. So the whole community then was able to mobilize savings. In that, the community has been able to maintain peace amongst themselves. Women and youth who normally in Africa set up do not own any asset have been able to keep a cow or two cows and deliver milk and be able to have an account number in the savings and credit cooperative, therefore having the ability to access financial services in their own capacity. It's such a success story that it has been featured in a number of national and international forums because this cooperative brought cohesion and peace among the community, enabled the community to access financial services, enabled the women to access financial services. Women have been able to, to vacate the traditional practices of female genital mutilation and get involved because they are financially empowered. I have included in a video that will be shown a YouTube link that you can watch the story of Leland Dairy Cooperative. And my question today to the Sherpas is, Africa communities are largely agricultural driven. How can we make global trade more fair and transparent to facilitate easier market access? What role does investment in quality and sustainable infrastructure, for example, play in enhancing peace and cohesion among communities in conflict? Cooperatives play a critical role in unifying communities. Should infrastructure financing target locations
Thank you.
with cooperative projects?
Uh,
Thank you very much.
I am very sorry. Mr.
Thank you.
There is a very short time, Mr. Marango. Thank you very much for your intervention. Very interesting, and also we can take your word about the role of a cooperative bank to promote development, but also to promote participation and involve whole people. And so we can introduce now Alexandra Wilson. Alexandra is a member of the board of International Cooperative Alliance and representing the cooperative and mutual organization from Canada. And she work a lot about the promote participation of women in the cooperative in the economic activity and economic sector. And so I am very happy to give the floor to Alexandra Wilson. Please, Mrs. Wilson, the floor.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yes? Good. I want to start by recognizing that I'm speaking to you from Ottawa in Canada. Ottawa is the unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe Indigenous peoples in Canada. So it's hard to sum up the Canadian cooperative movement in just a few words, but I'll do my best. We have today something like 8,000 cooperatives in Canada, and they range from small to very, very large enterprises. And together they make up about 3.5% of Canada's gross domestic product and employ 200,000 people. Something like 4 in 10 Canadians belong to a cooperative of one kind or another. And this rate of membership in cooperatives is as high as 7 in 10 in Quebec, for example. Cooperatives in Canada these days really span a great number of economic sectors. So agriculture, housing, banking, insurance, retail, wholesale, healthcare and social services, energy, transportation, arts, recreation, tourism, funeral services, natural resources, news media, and internet service. So they can be found all over the place. Now, historically, cooperatives played a vital role in the development of our country. It was interesting listening to our African colleague because it got me thinking about the similar things that cooperatives did in this country when they were first introduced more than 100 years ago. So cooperatives brought affordable credit to people, gave farmers control of agricultural supply and marketing activities, actively improving their livelihood, provided farmers with life insurance when it wasn't available elsewhere, and livestock insurance. A very important role cooperatives have played in empowering Indigenous peoples in Canada's far north. You may be familiar with Inuit art, which is known around the world. This is produced by members of cooperatives in the north and marketed through those cooperatives. Cooperatives really brought Inuit art to the world. Responsible retail services to Canadian consumers at fair prices, affordable housing for low and moderate income Canadians, affordable funeral services. I could go on and on, but of course I won't. Now, cooperatives today are not sitting on their laurels in Canada. They are trying to meet contemporary challenges. So actively asking themselves, what are the unmet needs of Canadians? So to give one small example, I'm on the board of a large insurance cooperative. We are asking ourselves, can we bring affordable life insurance to low-income Canadians who generally do without life insurance? Cooperatives are tackling climate change through joining international alliances, reducing their own carbon footprints, and setting targets to achieve net zero emissions. We are working to bring the full diversity of Canadian society into our membership and leadership. Very important, we're working to achieve gender parity in working conditions and representation and leadership. So I'm going to now focus on that. I want to start by saying that, first of all, the status of women in Canada has advanced considerably. So women are more likely than men to undertake post-secondary studies. They outnumber men among college and university graduates at every level except the PhD level, where they're catching up. Nonetheless, women earn less than men for full-time work, something like 77 cents for every dollar that men earn, and that's full-time to full-time. Women hold only 27% of the seats in the House of Commons, Canada's Parliament. They hold only 19.5 seats on the boards of Canadian companies, though I'm happy to say that number is closer to 30% in cooperatives. And they hold only 8.5% of the highest paid positions in the top 100 listed companies. Now, we may ask why that's important. What difference does it make? Doesn't it matter more what the situation most women is? But if women are absent from leadership, then the situation that faces most women is not going to improve. We need women's leadership to change the status of women more fundamentally. So cooperatives in Canada have joined this effort and are participating in the 50-30 challenge, which is an initiative created by the government of Canada, civil society, and the private sector that aims for gender parity and significant representation of underrepresented groups in general. And this is taking place in a number of different ways. So I'll give just a couple of examples. One from the insurance sector, with which I'm very familiar. So here, the Cooperatives Group, which is a very large multi-line insurance cooperative, has adopted a strategic goal of achieving parity in its senior leadership by 2030. Now, you know, it's 2021, and I've been concerned with the status of women my entire life, really. So 2030 doesn't seem very soon to me, but this is what it takes to move forward. We are taking steps to measure the gender wage gap. We do that actively now, and we're taking steps to eliminate that wage gap. But what we've worked out is that we have to do that by fundamentally through two things. Women predominate in our workforce, so there's nonetheless a gender wage gap because they are underrepresented in the senior ranks of the organization. So this is what we need to change. But it'll be very important in trying to change that to promote, for example, parental leave to the men in our workforce. It is available to the men, but men tend not to take parental leave. And studies have shown that because women step out of the workforce to look after their young children for a period of time, they fall behind in the workforce. So we are focusing on this. To give another example, the Mouvement Desjardins has adopted a strategic goal of achieving senior leadership gender parity by 2024. Now, I like that goal better. It's visibly more ambitious. Okay, so my question for the Sherpas would be,
Thank you. I'm sorry.
Am I out of time? That's fine. That's fine.
Running very quickly, and so I'm very sorry. But it's very important, your intervention, and I see that in the C20 working group and C20 task force, there is a lot of work about the gender equality, and also in Europe, Cooperative Europe and the Italian Cooperative Alliance made a very good work. Our colleagues Stefania Marcone and Danila and Anna Manca working very well about that, and I support your work and your position. And I hope we can enlarge the participation of the woman in the cooperative movement. And now I am very happy to introduce my good friend Osamu Nakano. Is member of the CICOPA, and so we work together many times. And Osamu is member of Japanese organization of cooperative, and is member of the Copa, and I am very happy to give the floor. Osamu, you have the floor. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay, can you hear me? All right, thank you for introducing.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for introducing Giuseppe. And first of all, I want to say hello to Ricardo Moro, because I met you in Japan 2 years ago when Japan Summit, Osaka Summit was held, and because actually I was in the member of C20 in Japan team, and I'm closely working. Still right now, I'm closely working people like Masaki Inaba, C20 Japan Sherpas. So in this sense, I'm pretty happy to see you, in today. And today I'm gonna talk about workers' cooperatives or cooperatives in industrial service sectors, particularly in Asia Pacific regions. And I wanna share some slides. And first of all, the relationship between employment and job opportunity and cooperatives. And as Ariel Garco, our president already mentions, a cooperative in the world already is providing the vast of employment in the world, and 290 million individuals worldwide. And this is up almost 12% of the entire employed population of G20 countries. And obviously, Asia Pacific is making up, a large part of them because, as you know, because large population in Asia Pacific region, such as China and India. And today, I'm gonna talk particularly about workers' cooperatives or cooperatives in industrial service sectors. And workers' cooperatives are enterprises run and managed by and for the workers who own the capital, both as equal members on matters related to running the business and have the right to stand in for actions of board directors. Any type of business can be worker owned and controlled, from service and retail to education manufacturing. These worker cooperatives have proven to be sustainable enterprises with survival rates at least as high as other types of enterprises. They also have a good record in terms of productivity and job preservation. And actually, this definition is not a cooperative word. This is made by ILO. And today, we have a Smell SM from ILO as speakers, and ILO thinking workers cooperatives or cooperatives in industrial service sectors is pretty important for the world of work in the world. And G20 countries in Asia Pacific regions, there are so many workers cooperatives. So, however, I'm gonna introduce briefly today, some example. In India, SEWA, Self-Employment Women's Association, is cooperative. Actually, there are labor unions of very poor self-employment women in India, and actually they have 1.5 million women in India, and obviously, they are working in order to protect, social right for female workers in India, and at the same time, they are establishing, creating cooperatives in order to provide healthcare service and education and digital service and so on. And also, in India, there's also ULCCS, and they are actually working on construction service. And actually, they, historically speaking, they were established by very poor construction workers in lower workers in caste system in India. So, however, right now, they are doing a pretty big construction project in India, and also, digital project, big digital project in India. And in Korea, there are workers cooperative also, and the Happy Village cooperatives, and they are providing food franchise service. And also in South Korea, there are workers cooperatives of taxi and bus drivers. And Australia, there's a workers cooperatives providing healthcare, elderly care, and Indonesia, and initial paid help, and their workers cooperative, their actually workers cooperative initiatives is providing service to very lower, poor drivers in Indonesia. And in Japan, workers cooperative movement is pretty strong. And actually, I'm working in workers cooperative in Japan, and we are providing street cleaning service and child care and small scale forest management service. And moreover, we are this kind of elderly care. So, however, important thing is that we are working with people with disability or people with these various difficulties. And this guy, actually, he has, as you can see, he has Down syndrome. So, however, he's working as a worker members in a workers cooperative, and he is care helpers, and providing to care to elderly users. And moreover, middle women. He's actually 80 years old. So, however, he's still worker members, and he's working as helpers and providing to care service to elderly users. So, in this regard, you know, in workers cooperatives, there's a certain kind of mutual help or a mutual help relationship. And this mutual help is a kind of spirit of cooperative in the world. And I believe, you know, this kind of spirit, mutual help is a certain kind of spirit of civil society, I think. And then, you know, last year in Japan, Workers' Cooperative Act was enacted, and this act is prescribes the purpose of workers' cooperatives. Is this? The purpose of workers' cooperatives is to promote the creation of diverse employment opportunities and the implementation of business to meet diverse demands in local communities, thereby contributing to...
Thank you, Zamos. I'm sorry, but the time is running very, very, very quickly.
All right. In any case, Workers' Cooperative is trying to achieve sustainable development, sustainable and vibrant communities in the world. And this is pretty important for civil society movement in the world, I think. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm sorry, my role is very, very not a good role, but I need to keep the time for your meeting. Thank you very much for that. Now we talk about health sector. Carlos Zarco is the president of International Health Cooperative Organization and director of Espino Foundation in Spain. Is very, very good leader on the cooperative in the health sector, and so I am very happy to give the floor. Please, Mr. Zarco, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Giuseppe. Well, I try to be on time. Well, health is one of the main concerns in people's lives, particularly in the current pandemic situation. Therefore, it's natural for people to join forces to respond to their health concerns and needs. Cooperatives are an excellent way to join forces, but which will be the role of cooperatives in the health sector? Well, cooperatives satisfy various health-related needs. Patients want to receive the best healthcare at the lowest possible cost. Cooperatives allow them to better interact with healthcare providers. Suppose they reach a sufficient number of members. In that case, they can even become the owners of the healthcare resources, such as hospitals or health centers. To cope with the high healthcare cost, patients can also share the financial risk through cooperatives acting as insurers. On the other hand, health professionals can also meet their needs by creating a cooperative. It ensures them better working conditions and high-quality equipment and facilities to practice their profession. And which is the potential of the cooperatives to face the global health challenges? Well, the COVID-19 pandemic strongly hit health systems with a sudden increase in the demand for health services. Hospitals were under pressure and health professionals were overwhelmed and exhausted. In some countries, the health system just collapsed and people had no access to health services. This emergency has added to other challenges that healthcare has already faced since before the pandemic. Governments have increasing difficulties managing the greater demand for health services, arising from the aging population and the prevalence of chronic diseases. On the other hand, citizens have higher expectation of the quality and personalization of the health services. There is a need to manage a complex balance between improving the quality of health services and ensuring equitable access while keeping health and their expenditure under control. Cooperatives can help with these issues, but we need supportive global policies to unfold all our potential in the health sector. It's essential that cooperatives participate in the G20 discussions. I would like to briefly share with you the experience of my organization in Spain, the SPIR Foundation. It's a network of health cooperatives that provide health coverage to more than 2.6 million people. It managed 30 million medical appointments, 490,000 surgical interventions, and more than 540,000 emergencies every year. The whole network employs 6,200 people, of whom 82% have open-ended contracts. Like most of the healthcare companies in SPIR cooperatives were strongly hit by the coronavirus health emergency. However, we have been up to our commitment to society. We made our hospitals available to the health authorities to serve the population and prevent the collapse of the public health system. We reallocated resources and health professionals, expanded hospitals' capacity, and implemented digital solutions and telemedicine to ensure care for policyholders. We also set up several initiatives addressed to care for the community, like a website and a telephone service to advise citizens on COVID-19, financial programs to support cooperators, and a solidarity fund to cover healthcare workers affected by the coronavirus. There are many more successful experiences worldwide. Some of them are well-consolidated companies with half a century of operation in the health sector, like Unimed in Brazil, the largest medical care network in the country, active across 85% of the territory, or in Japan, where health cooperatives have a long tradition and have been covered by national legislation since the 1940s. Currently, they cover more than 3 million people and run 75 cooperative hospitals, providing jobs to 40,000 health professionals. I could mention other good examples in some of the countries like Argentina, Italy, Colombia, India, Canada, etc. According to the figures published by the United Nations Secretary General report, approximately 100 million households worldwide have access to health services through cooperatives, which are present in 76 countries. In conclusion, the pandemic has made health the highest priority on the governmental agendas. The health systems in many countries are reviewing their structures to implement the lessons learned. Within this context of reconstruction and renewal, health cooperatives have a new opportunities to expand. History has shown that cooperatives arise in contexts of significant transformation because our companies are remarkably resilient to crisis. Moreover, health cooperatives are in a unique position to help countries and governments achieve sustainable development goal number 3 because of our commitment, flexibility, and efficiency. Health is a public good that is increasingly difficult to provide with individual responses, whether from the state, the private sector, or civil society. Health has to be a social construction based on solidarity, complementarity, and collaboration. The recovery policies for health systems must consider the coexistence of collaboration of all the healthcare actors, whether public or private. Finally, I want to highlight the importance of conveying the message to G20 leaders, the message that cooperatives can be a powerful tool to reveal better together. As we globally expressed on the International Day of Cooperatives, we must remind the G20 countries that there are fairer and more innovative and democratic ways to do business. We must claim that cooperative companies produce great value to society, that cooperatives are the key in the implementation of the global policies to redistribute income and wealth. And that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zarco. Very good intervention. Well, we are concluding our first panel for introduce the role of cooperatives around the world. Let me switch to Italian languages to introduce now the two Sherpa from the presidency, and also because I speak better in Italian than English. Benissimo, ancora un grande grazie Chiedo scusa di nuovo per avervi ridotto i tempi cioè tagliato i tempi di intervento, ma davvero il tempo scorre così in fretta. E ovviamente il grande piacere di avere qui con noi oggi Riccardo Moro e Valeria Emmi, sono i due Sherpa che seguono in particolare la Task Force C20, cioè il gruppo sulla società civile. Sono essi stessi due espressioni importanti della società civile italiana con questo ruolo di collegamento con la presidenza del G20. Riccardo Moro è un esperto di politiche internazionali e collabora col più importante istituto di ricerca sulle politiche internazionali italiano, ISPI, molto conosciuto anche all'estero, e si occupa in particolare di temi che riguardano il contrasto alla povertà a livello globale. E poi abbiamo Valeria Emmi, consentitemi anche un piccolo cenno di orgoglio territoriale, perché Valeria Emmi è un responsabile soprattutto delle politiche di relazioni di CESVI. CESVI è una grande organizzazione non governativa che si occupa di cooperazione allo sviluppo, che è nata e ha sede nella mia città, nella città di Bergamo, quindi ho anche un piccolo, diciamo, di patria nel avere qui con noi oggi Valeria Emmi, proprio per l'organizzazione in cui lavora. Bene, siamo molto ansiosi di sentirli. Nei 4 interventi che avete ascoltato avete potuto cogliere alcune delle questioni. Riprendo e sottolineo la questione su cui stava intervenendo Alessandra Wilson, cioè il fatto che a causa della pandemia molte persone hanno perso il lavoro, fra queste molte donne, sia per effetto diretto della pandemia, sia per effetto della necessità di continuare ad occuparsi dei propri figli o dei propri genitori anziani e aver lasciato il lavoro. Questa è una questione che dobbiamo affrontare globalmente. Che cosa si dice all'interno del percorso che stanno facendo i soggetti della società civile all'interno dei tavoli di lavoro? Bene, io ora davvero mi fermo qui e chiedo intanto di intervenire a Riccardo Moro. Prego, dottor Moro, a lei la parola. Riccardo Moro is not with us.
I have to unmute, sorry. Solo una questione in italiano. Quanto tempo abbiamo, per cortesia? Per saperci regolare.
Una dozzina di minuti ciascuno per lei e la dottoressa Emmi, quello che possiamo avere come spazio a questo punto.
Ok, 10 più 10, 12 più 12.
Sì, perfetto.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll speak English. So first, thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here with you to share this opportunity with the world of the cooperatives. And I've heard a lot of words that are absolutely familiar and coherent, that sounds familiar for us, and that are absolutely coherent with all the reflection that the C20 is developing. I am very happy to meet again, even if virtually like that, Mr. Osamu Nakano. I remember very well our meeting with Masaki 2 years ago in Tokyo. And yes, what can I say? Some word on the role played by the Civil 20. As you've heard at the beginning, and probably several of you also are familiar with, within the process of the G20, some engagement groups have been set up. These happened after the call of civil society at first, but also trade unions to be heard, during the discussion of the G20. You know that at the beginning, G20 didn't play a very relevant role. We had the G7 and sometimes the G8, according to the role with Russia that the 7 countries had. And they played a relevant role in coordinating economic policies and also other engagements on the world agenda. Of course, from civil society, there was always a sort of protest, of criticism, saying that you are not the world government. You are not legitimate to act as a world government. We don't want a world led by the richest, by someone who has the power, setting the lines for everybody, while we have a majority of people that are not part of that group. After the 28 crisis, the G7 realized that they weren't enough to manage the financial crisis and the consequent economic crisis. So they improved the role played till that time by the G20. G20 was a very light coordination among Ministry of Finance at the time, and they transformed the G7 in a meeting of also of the head of state and of governments. And the G20 started playing a relevant role in making almost disappearing the G7. Of course, G20 is better, if we want to, than G7, because we have a lot more countries that are part of the process. We have some relevant countries from the south of the world that have been in the past historically excluded by the G7 dimension, but also by the relevant decision-making process in the United Nations. But anyway, 20 is not 198. United Nations is a totally different picture than the G20. So civil society started or continued speaking with the G20 because pragmatically G20 is a relevant space for the decision-making process. I mean, a lot of decisions that are at the end taken or discussed at the UN level, at the international level, are, let's say, prepared within the G20. Because in the G20, we have some of the most, if not all, the most relevant, let's say, powerful actors at the global level. That's the reason why we as civil society, we think that that it's meaningful to speak with them, but always raising this call on the legitimation, saying you have the duty to speak about your responsibility to strengthen the multilateral framework, to strengthen the initiatives for international justice, but you mustn't act as the world government. As you perfectly know, we continue repeating this call, but the G20, well, the G20 normally listen to us, but often they are acting a little bit as if they have the power. And in fact, they have pragmatically the power. So we asked to have a formal space for discussion, and not to have a dialogue that is, how can I say, given by someone sometimes. And in fact, the G20 answered, creating this engagement groups that are sort of institutional spaces for dialogue between the G20 and some specific areas of the society. And so we have B20, and you are part of the B20, collecting and gathering business. We have L20, Labor 20, gathering trade unions, Women 20, etc., for Youth 20, etc., etc., etc. Civil society is probably one of the widest, if not the widest, of these engagement groups, because it doesn't gather organization only from the 20, but we are gathering organization and members from all over the world. Actually, we are more than 560 organizations that are part of the Civil 20, but within this figure, we have some single organization. Normally, they are at least a national organization, but we have also network like you are. So behind some of these members, we have a very big and interesting and relevant dimension of network active all over the world. It is a very diverse engagement group, of course, that is putting in place a sort of relatively liquid process, as I used to say. That is that we are not a very strongly organized institution. We are not an institution. We are an opportunity to work together under the lead, the presidency of the civil society, the networks of the civil society of the country that is hosting the process. That means that every year we change. 2 years ago, we had Japanese civil society leading the process. That's the reason I met Osamu, because I was attending a meeting in that framework. Last year was Saudi Arabia. This year is Italy. Next year will be Indonesia, and the following year it will be India. And the exercise and even the challenge is to be able to not only welcome everybody, but to facilitate the discussion, the process, the elaboration. We do that in putting in place some working groups, a little bit like the G20 is structured, but not in a very mirrored way, because we build up our working groups also according to our priorities and according to some interconnections that we think are relevant. In this moment, we have 8 working groups, and we are very happy to see always also the participation of the cooperatives, of your networks in those working groups. What I want to say in this last part of my speech, then I will leave to Valeria to provide you some specific element of the content of the debate we are developing in the different working groups, and particularly according to our priorities. And I think that the difficult exercise is to be able to collect together an effective political advocacy, an effective political message. It is difficult for several reasons, as you can imagine. And one reason is also the diversity we have in our network, in our constituency. That is, of course, a richness, but it is something that we have to work with also. But what is good is that even if we are so diverse, there is a really strong common consensus on using the human rights as the common framework to organize any political, really any political reflection. And that's reason why, for instance, it is, even with this diversity, it is, well, sometimes it may be not easy, but it's possible to find a common proposal and common strong proposal. The second, and I will say something on that afterwards. The second point is that the G20 is not, even if we have these engagement groups, the G20 is not exactly a really open space. The G20 is organized in 2 main tracks. One is called Sherpa track, and the other one is called finance track. And this gives you already the idea of how crazy and dangerous this work is organized, in which crazy way and dangerous way is organized. What I want to say? I want to say that all the ministers on any issue meet and then try to synthesize their messages helped by the Sherpas, trying to create a sort of common reflection, while the ministries of finance, they met in a separate way that has no communication and no connection to the other ministers. So we have a meeting on health, meeting of women and gender, meeting on labor, meeting on anything you can imagine, but without the finance dimension. And then we have the Ministry of Finance meeting together, but closed door, taking decision and setting the frameworks without any kind of political mandate. Because the ministries of finance have no political mandate to deal, to shaping politically our societies. And this is a very strong problem that we meet every day in our governments, in our states, but that at the national dimension can be tackled. At the international dimension, this is happening and it is difficult to tackle. It is a problem we have with the World Bank and the IMF in the past, designing the rules for debt relief or structural adjustment or any other political program. And it is important to be aware of that. And the third element that I want to share with you is the lack of policy coherence. Within the G20 path, we have a lot of meetings, thematic meetings, but the exercise to put things together, it's a very light exercise. While one of the most relevant messages that we are trying to raise up is the message in favor of the policy coherence. We can't speak about sustainable development. We can't speak about poverty reduction. We can't speak about climate, about anything, if we are not able to shape together the different political lines that we want to raise up for the different sectors. We can't deal with sustainable product, with climate, without speaking about what we want to do about our industry, about the way we organize work and production. We can't speak about social justice without a reference to political economy and to health and look at what happened last year and this year with the impact of COVID. Can we speak about health only thinking about the dimension of health and without including the rest in a sort of holistic approach? This is lacking, this idea of, I mean, when you speak with the officials, of course, they are very, very interesting people and they are aware of that, but the structure is not helping in terms of building policy coherence. So this is from the last point, and I will give the floor to Valeria, is that we do need you. I mean, what you do in every day is something that I personally consider very relevant. And I use some words that use, starting from the identity that the chair presented, but also using what Vincent said at the beginning, that with cooperatives, you are building peace. The idea of being active in an economic dimension, having as a identity line the sharing, and I wrote here two words that I think that are relevant. That is putting together sharing and democracy. I think that means building a presence in the economic field that creates strengthen social fabric. And we do desperately need a social fabric in this moment. With all this growing of populism, of nationalism, of dangers like the discourse that we listen from Trump, Bolsonaro, Duterte, and a lot of other leaders, Orban, Salvini in Italy, there is really a danger in the tenor of our social of our societies. That's the reason why I think that it's important continuing building social fabric. That is what you are contributing to do. But it's important too, from your experience, try to be able to raise political demands that are for everybody, and not just to protect or facilitate your presence, even if something is needed, because there are some governments that are obstaculizing, or there are creating obstacles for cooperatives. I do know that, but I think that you can help us in providing political demands that are for everybody, that can strengthen our message, giving also credibility. And so I was speaking about human rights. Let's think about, and I will give the floor to say something on that to Valeria. When we raise our political demand on health, on the quality of labor, etc., we are doing that, trying to show how directly the demands come from the framework of human rights. Just one point, also to show how complex can be the issue. Carlos at the end spoke about the opportunity of health cooperatives. I would say that this is a tricky point, because in fact, the challenge should be to be able to have robust public health system, where private actors are active within the public initiative, even possibly, I say something in a way, a very strong way, even without a public actor, even without cooperatives, but not because we don't like that, but because the point is that human rights means that the access to health is a right for everybody and hasn't to be paid, has to be funded via the taxes. That's the reason why policy coherence means to put together the demands on health and the demands on tax justice and on international taxes. And your experience, starting from this last example of a sort of intermediate situation like that we have in a lot of countries, with the role played by health cooperatives, can be very relevant in finding doable request. Because if we just ask for maximalist cause, we won't be heard. If we start from our example, and I am sure that we can find a lot of degrees starting from health, going to a lot of other of your experience, we'll be very strong in our cause and will be heard. Valeria, over to you. Sorry if I spoke too much.
Thanks a lot, Ricardo, and hi everyone. It's a real pleasure to be with you all. I will share with you quickly, I promise, just a few key recommendations that are coming up from the work done by the C20 working groups mentioned by Ricardo. Just to give you an idea, but you are quite active in the C20 process. We established 8 working groups. The finance working group, which is the biggest, I'd say, because it put together also issues on trade and in the international architecture, for instance. And we have the 2030 Agenda and Development Working Group, which is key, as you can imagine, also for the constituency of the C20. We have the Global Health Working Group, the Climate Sustainability Working Group, the Education, Gender, Digitalization, and Anti-Corruption Working Groups. These are just titled, but you can imagine how hard it's the work each working group is doing in defining specific key recommendations, because as a global active civil society organization, at the core of this engagement group, there is the idea of collaboration, first of all, the value of collaboration and facilitation, aiming to connect to the work together, especially by combining a very pragmatic collective exchange about building a more substantial advocacy framework so that we can become more effective change organization in ensuring our voice will be channeled effectively to get the changes we need. Thanks a lot also for your inputs from the different geographical and thematic perspectives. Actually, we are tackling the different issues you raised and going more in depth in the bear in mind the centrality of human rights that Ricardo mentioned, and the UN-centered multilateral process, which we always boost within in our call for the G20. There are some key elements, especially in advancing on the 2030 agenda and development, and strengthen the commitment and a new path of sustainability. So in this case, especially because the theme, the key theme of the development working group at G20 level was the innovative financing, we call for an ambitious agenda for debt relief and long-term debt sustainability to ensure that especially developing countries could have the adequate fiscal space to confront their critical development challenges. And in this setting, we called for combining short, medium-term measures to tackle immediate liquidity challenges with longer-term structural reforms to address solvency issues and restore debt sustainability. This is one of the key recommendations we are addressing, we are channeling to the G20 interlocutors. Then you mentioned the gender issues. We established a specific gender working group, which has a huge work and a challenging function, especially in making sure that the gender perspective is brought to the table in all of the working groups and issues analysis and, of course, policy recommendations. We had this year, it was an excellent work done actually in the dialogue we are building with the G20 officials about labor, because we haven't a specific working group on labor, but we had, say, the more fruitful discussion with the labor working group who tackled especially issues like the digitalization era and the challenges, and also the social protection and gender issues. So as Alexander mentioned, yes, especially the pandemic is raising this gender gap, and also the role of women and the protection of women also in the domestic at the domestic level. So one specific call on the international community, including the G20, from the C20 side, was is to create strengthen, I'd say, gender transformative social protection floors that can ensure that women and girls in all their diversity have access to livelihood, are able to address life cycle risks and shocks, as well as face vulnerabilities created by systematic cultural and gender stereotypes or different forms of discrimination. And yes, women are still underrepresented in some of the most dynamic sectors, including, for instance, the ICT sector, which offer higher pay and better career opportunities. So one recommendation we delivered to the G20, especially the ministries of labor, is to increase the number of girls studying STEM subjects and promoting a greater participation of girls in educational pathways that ensure rapid entry into labor markets, including, for instance, in scientific and technological disciplines, which is for us key and necessary. Another recommendation regards the regulation and policies to close the gender pay gap, which are essential, of course. To this end, we called for the G20 to define a new target within the Brisbane target set by the G20 countries, one target concerning the absolute increase of women's employment. It was also a request from the Women 20, unfortunately, as per the declaration, final declaration of the ministers' meeting on labor. Unfortunately, we don't have this kind of target, but it seems quite clear to the G20 that we need to refine our commitment, the country commitment, to ensure that the gender pay gap and in general the involvement of women in the labor setting could be enhanced. And just let me mention also the gender-based violence, which is increasing because of the COVID-19, but in general is a key challenge at global level. And especially we tackled the gender-based violence in the digital space, or the cyber violence against women and girls in the virtual space, because they are still regulated. And we called for an urgent reaction with more cooperation among states to make the virtual space safer for all. Just let me mention the last thing regarding global health and I'd say the holistic approach, which is also mentioned by the G20 Italian presidency, and it's in the goals and objectives defined this year, which is the One Health approach. So and we really believe that One Health approach should be guide the practices, especially monitoring practices and solutions towards holistic global health systems. I mean that in order to avert especially future health crises, restore an healthy planet on sustainable in a sustainable way, and hunger, for instance, to employ an holistic One Health approach is essential. And by highlighting the ways our current challenges are interconnected, One Health points to the need to tackle human, animal, and environmental health holistically and pave the way to a stronger strategy to face this current challenge, but also the future challenges. I might leave there just because of the time is running, but of course I'm at your disposal if you have any question.
Thank you very much for your intervention. It's true that the time is running very quickly, and so we have finished our time. But I ask everyone to remain with us, because we are again two very important intervention. And so one of the most important function of this meeting is the networking. And so we asked the Simel Ishin of the International Labour Organization to join us in this meeting, because the working issue, labor issue, is very important for cooperatives. But also I believe that cooperation between C20 and the ILO is very important. Also because in view of the 2022 conference in the ILO that we talk about of social economy, I'm very happy for that. And so thank you very much, Simel, to join us, and I am very happy to give the floor to you. Please, Simel.
Grazie Giuseppe, buon pomeriggio. Thank you for this invitation. As you well know, there are strong historic links between the ILO and the global cooperative movement. The ILO has had a co-op unit since 1920. First ILO Director General was a French cooperator, Albert Thomas. To this day, ILO remains the only United Nations specialized agency with a specific mandate on cooperatives. The International Cooperative Alliance has been a partner to the ILO in promoting cooperatives with a general observer status at the International Labour Conference, and consultations with the international cooperative movement are also stipulated in the ILO Constitution. The ILO's work on cooperatives is guided by a recommendation. It's a standard on promotion of cooperatives that was adopted in 2002, with the active involvement of cooperative movement members. Many recent ILO standards mention cooperatives, including the ILO Centenary Declaration for the Future of Work that was adopted 2 years ago. Now, the relationship, I think, between co-op movement representatives and ILO takes place on a daily basis across countries, regions, sectors, because in ILO Co-op we are just a handful of people, and always very happy to engage, but also very overstretched, like I guess everyone else around this table. But luckily, the richness of these conversations are happening in Sri Lanka, in Colombia, in Japan, Jordan, Uganda, every day, on policy advocacy, on development projects, on studies, study tours, training activities, joint events, and it goes beyond, what happens in Geneva. I want to just highlight a few to give you a sense of the range. In Africa, ILO and ICA Africa have undertaken a joint study on cooperatives and trade. This is an important topic for the continent, including emphasis on examples of how co-op to co-op trade can happen. And we looked at your experiences, like from Italy, in doing that. In Asia, we have as ILO and ICA Asia Pacific organized joint events on worker cooperatives with OSAMO and on women's collective entrepreneurship with Self-Employed Women's Association and its Cooperative Federation. With the Japanese cooperative movement, we had an African cooperative study tour to Japan every year, except unfortunately because of COVID last year and this year. But we didn't sit idly, and with ILO, Tokyo colleagues and JCA, JCCU, we produced a retrospective book to capture this unique and special activity. With the ICA Cooperative Research Committee, we organized jointly a conference on cooperatives and world of work, and the select papers were then gathered in a book. We work with Carlos and IHCO in exploring the potential of the cooperative model in promoting public health in Kenya and Cameroon, and also toward establishing a global health cooperative platform. ILO training tools, like the most recent one on child labor in agriculture, are developed by cooperative experts, reviewed and tested by national cooperative federations and cooperative education institutions that are going to use them on the ground in Uganda, in Tanzania, and Mali. And last but not least, the relationship with the cooperative movement in Italy is very important and very special to us, not because there are so many amazing cooperatives there, but also such generous and collaborative colleagues that are almost all here. Having studied with Vera and Stefano Zamani in Bologna, I love to share the Emilia-Romagna example of creating a conducive ecosystem for cooperatives with other countries. My own city in Turkey, Izmir, is like the Bologna of Turkey, in fact. And when doing a mapping of care services through cooperatives, we organized a joint event with ConfCoop to explore the rich experience of social cooperative model in Italy. At ILO's training center in Turin, we arranged study tours to visit Italian cooperatives in Piemonte. We invite Italian cooperative leaders to share experiences with us on rural, gender, migration academies. Across the years also, we had the opportunity to join our Italian co-op sisters and brothers at events like Milan Expo, Social Cooperative Academy, launch of the Women Empowerment book with Desiree, to present, to exchange, and to learn. Now, in addition, we look to our Italian cooperative sisters and brothers in part to do partnerships, especially around development projects in the Mediterranean basin. For instance, we've been talking with our colleagues from Lega Coop for their guidance in establishing a cooperative development fund for the Palestinian Cooperative Works Agency. Italian development cooperation funds are also critical in providing support to the Palestinian constituents in the implementation of their cooperative strategy. In my own country, Turkey, Italian COP leaders like dear Giuseppe have provided support to move the thinking forward on social cooperatives, with Ünal, who's also in the audience. We are happy to facilitate a partnership with young cooperators in Turkey with Roberta and Lega Coop, which resulted in joint projects. So we are also very encouraged what has been achieved listening to you all in ensuring the participation of cooperatives in the B20 and C20 experiences under Italian presidency. We hope it continues under the Indonesian presidency. We understand from our own engagement at the ILO that Indonesian presidency is interested in cooperatives, agricultural cooperatives, and they have approached us on cooperative statistics. So we are also proposing to engage with them on implementing the guidelines on statistics of cooperatives that were adopted in 2018 at the International Conference of Labor Statisticians. As Giuseppe said, this year, the ILO governing body decided to place a general discussion on the social and solidarity economy for the next year's International Labor Conference. It's an opportunity, of course, for co-op movements in G20 countries and beyond to advocate with their governments to ensure that cooperatives are well represented in this discussion. And this may mean that you are in those national delegations from the government side, worker side, the employer side, and that you are, contributing to their thinking and to what they say at that conference. I thank you and look forward to continuing to learn from you. Back to you, Giuseppe.
Thank you very much, Sim. It's a pleasure to meet you. And now we have our president. I switch to Italian to introduce my president, Mauro Lusetti, è il presidente dell'Alleanza delle Cooperative Italiane, e quindi è davvero un piacere e un onore per noi che Mauro Lusetti condivida questo momento. Non prendo altro tempo perché siamo davvero usciti dai margini che ci eravamo dati. Presidente Lusetti, a te la parola, grazie.
Grazie Guerini, sono sicuramente onorato di concludere questo webinar e di condividere con voi alcune riflessioni. Con voi siete oltre 100 cooperatori di tutto il continente e quindi oltre che essere onorato sono anche emozionato. Mi associo ai ringraziamenti e ai saluti che il Presidente Garco ha fatto all'inizio nei confronti di tutte quelle persone che hanno reso possibile una presenza qualificata della cooperazione nel C20, nei lavori del G20 e nella realizzazione di questo webinar. L'ACI, l'Alleanza delle Cooperative Italiane, come sapete è il coordinamento di 3 organizzazioni che rappresentano oltre il 90% delle cooperative italiane, oltre il 90% dei soci e del volume d'affari. ACI è circa l'8% del PIL del nostro paese. I numeri, l'aspetto muscolare però non è l'aspetto che a noi cooperatori italiani piace mettere in evidenza, perché le caratteristiche del movimento cooperativo italiano sono anche altre, quelle che ne definiscono il profilo dal punto di vista sociale e dal punto di vista della presenza nelle comunità nelle quali le nostre cooperative operano. Sono quasi 10 milioni le persone che utilizzano i servizi sociosanitari, sono oltre 1.200.000 i lavoratori, 12 milioni i soci, rappresentiamo in tanti settori dal punto di vista economico leader di mercato in grado di condizionare la evoluzione stessa del mercato. Sono il 58% dei nostri soci e dei nostri lavoratori sono donne e il 15% sono migranti. E quindi questo profilo inclusivo, questo profilo di un movimento che si pone seriamente il problema della parità di genere come elemento distintivo, come elemento di valorizzazione culturale, di valorizzazione dei profili anche sul piano professionale, è un elemento che a noi cooperatori italiani piace sempre mettere in evidenza accanto al tema dei volumi d'affari, del numero di cooperative, del numero di dipendenti, ma il profilo sociale è quello che a noi preme di più. Ci riconosciamo in maniera particolare in quelli che sono i temi scelti dalla presidenza italiana del G20, People, Prosperity e Planet, perché noi riteniamo di essere un movimento che a livello nazionale, ma più in generale sul piano internazionale, perché gli interventi dei cooperatori e delle cooperatrici che mi hanno preceduto questo dicono, ci riteniamo di essere un movimento che mette al centro il benessere delle persone, ci riteniamo essere un movimento dove siamo scuola di democrazia, perché le persone all'interno delle cooperative discutono, si dividono, votano, eleggono i propri rappresentanti, ci immaginiamo ancora come uno dei pochi ascensori sociali dove persone di umili origini possono migliorare la propria condizione di vita sia dal punto di vista materiale che dal punto di vista sociale. Stiamo uscendo come paesi occidentali, come Italia, dalla pandemia, vediamo alla fine di un tunnel la luce, non possiamo abbassare la guardia perché comunque la pandemia non è stata del tutto sconfitta, ma da questo punto di vista evidenziamo 2 strumenti che ci consentono oggi di essere più ottimisti rispetto a qualche tempo fa, sicuramente il piano di vaccinazione che sta avendo il suo successo e l'intervento economico europeo che per quanto riguarda l'Italia si traduce nel PNRR che con oltre 200 miliardi di risorse che vengono messe a disposizione per lo sviluppo del paese. Su questo tema noi siamo assolutamente precisi e decisi. Non ci basta registrare una crescita del PIL per immaginare un rilancio del nostro paese. Noi abbiamo bisogno di uno sviluppo che abbia, oltre a una crescita materiale del PIL, anche i connotati di uno sviluppo che sia inclusivo e che sia sostenibile. È per questo che noi non rivendichiamo solo elementi per la cooperazione, ma ci siamo presentati con le nostre proposte. Abbiamo una visione di società che abbiamo sintetizzato nel nostro documento Cambiare l'Italia cooperando, ma abbiamo anche un nostro piano di progetti, oltre 40, di cui 7 emblematici li abbiamo presentati alle istituzioni italiane, perché vogliamo contribuire con la nostra capacità, con la nostra sensibilità, con la nostra presenza nella società italiana a far sì di costruire un paese nuovo. Non ci interessa ricostruire un paese che già prima della pandemia non ci piaceva, vogliamo metterci a disposizione del paese per costruire una società che sia, dicevo prima, inclusiva delle persone più fragili, delle persone che sono state ulteriormente penalizzate dalla pandemia e dall'emergenza sanitaria, e sostenibile dal punto di vista ambientale. Vogliamo consegnare alle generazioni future un pianeta che sia migliore di quello che abbiamo ricevuto. Non abbiamo una visione pan-cooperativa del mondo, ma ci riteniamo una risorsa importante per il pianeta. Noi abbiamo la consapevolezza dei nostri limiti, ma anche delle nostre potenzialità. Oggi, se vogliamo cambiare paradigma dal punto di vista della crescita economica, si incrociano i valori cooperativi. Condivisione, coesione sociale sono elementi fondamentali del nostro essere cooperativa, del nostro essere cooperatore, del nostro essere cooperatrici. Per questo auspico di poter continuare a lavorare congiuntamente con tutti voi per il benessere degli abitanti del nostro pianeta e per, come dicevo prima, consegnare alle generazioni future un mondo sicuramente più sostenibile. Nel salutarvi, spero di vedervi tutti al side event che abbiamo previsto per il 6 e il 10 ottobre. Grazie a tutti e buon lavoro.
Grazie mille Presidente Lusetti, anch'io aggiungo i miei ringraziamenti a tutti, grazie a tutti i collaboratori italiani e di Alleanza delle Cooperative Internazionali, un grazie particolare e un abbraccio a Joseph Niguna, che recentemente è stato colpito da un lutto, ma che è stato con noi comunque oggi. Un forte abbraccio a tutti e arrivederci. Grazie.
Facciamo la foto, Beppe, una foto, please, all of you, turn on your video, don't go, let's have a photograph, please. I don't see everybody though. Lair, can you please help us?
But I think it's not possible to take a photo for a whole people.
Well, we try. Lair, can you please try?
Lair, it's you.
Yes. Open your cameras, the ones that want to be there, smile, and I will take some pictures, okay? Thank you so much.
Grazie, Lair.
Vale. Smile a little bit more. We are nearly there. And now the last one. Another second. And here we are. That's it. Many thanks.
Many thanks.
Arrivederci.
Grazie a
Buon lavoro e
tutti.
buona giornata.
Thank
Grazie.
you.